let's get our bearings. How we are going to come to understand the 70,000 years of human history, the 70,000 years of globalization. Let's consider the 7 ages of globalization. I have tried to categorize the 70,000 years according to changing technologies, changing economic activities, changing knowledge and culture, changing ways in which we live, from hunter-gatherers to living in megacities. And to do this by demarcating 7 great ages. And by understanding those 7 ages, we will understand a great deal about planetary scale change. And we'll also gain a lot of insights into the ongoing change in our own time. These 7 ages of globalization are the Paleolithic, which means the Old Stone Age, and this is a period roughly from 70,000 BC, or BCE, before the Common Era, the dating of that great dispersal from Africa, to around 10,000 BCE, the end of the Ice Age and the beginning of the age of agriculture. The second age of globalization is the Neolithic, or New Stone Age. The Neolithic age is the age of the early era of agriculture, of domestication of animals, of animal husbandry, and of the technologies of village life, including the technologies of early government. So this is a period that extends from around 10,000 BCE to around 3,000 BCE, or 5,000 years ago. The third age of globalization is what I have called the Equestrian, meaning the horse-based age. The horse is an incredible species, and the domestication of the horse was an absolutely transformative innovation of humanity. The horse, of course, was the mode of transport, of warfare, and of a great deal of work on the farm for thousands and thousands of years. The horse was the early locomotive, the automobile of 3000 BCE. And so the domestication of the horse was a momentous change for humanity. But as we'll see, it was a change that took place only in certain locations in the world, and those specific locations gained great benefit and power by virtue of the fact that they had access to horse-based technology, horse-based power, horse-based transport, horse-based or cavalry military might. So the third era of globalization is the Equestrian Age. The fourth age of globalization I call the Classical Age because it is the age of the classical empires, the Roman Empire, the Hellenistic empires of Alexander the Great, and the successor states after his death in 323 BCE. And these classical empires spread across much of the world, and notably in Eurasia. And we remember them today vividly, whether it is the Roman Empire in the west of Eurasia or the Han Dynasty in the Far East, in China, as the great classic empires that would remain in the imagination of humanity ever since, and still a source for inspiration and emulation by governments and individuals until today. Well, that classical or imperial age I categorize as lasting from around 1000 BCE over a 2,500-year period up to around 1500 AD. Now, in 1500 AD, of course, enormously consequential development occurs, and that is the global transoceanic navigation, because it's in the period of the last years of the 15th century, the 1490s, when European navigators essentially succeed in conquering the vast oceans, the Atlantic Ocean, and the passage from the Atlantic Ocean into the Indian Ocean around the Cape of Good Hope at the southern tip of Africa. And as we've already seen, the economist Adam Smith, writing in 1776, noted that those two voyages were the two most significant events in the history of mankind, he said, because they united the world. Well, in fact, they united the world in a way. They enabled the creation for the first time ever of transoceanic empires, vast empires that circled the world, the earliest of which were the Portuguese Empire and the Spanish Empire. And that brought forward a new era of globalization, a transoceanic, cross the oceans, imperial age. And it was an age notably of European empires that conquered large parts of the Americas, large parts of Africa, and large parts of Asia. I define that fifth age of globalization as lasting from 1500 to 1800, a relatively short 300 years, because it is at the end of the 18th century, that is in the late 1700s, that momentous technological breakthroughs reshape how humanity lives and works and fights and conquers much of the rest of the world. It brings forward an age of urban industrialization. So the sixth age of globalization, beginning around 1800, based on technological innovations of the 18th century, an astounding number of which originate in Britain, give rise to a completely new kind of economy with unprecedented productivity, and thereby giving rise to a new kind of industrial military with unprecedented capacity for destruction and for conquest. The 19th century, the 1800s that is the first century of industrialization. Britain gets there first, and it is Britain that rules the seas because it is the first industrial society in the world, and the British Empire becomes the empire on which the sun never sets. By the end of the 19th century, the British Empire is in all parts of the world, in the Americas, throughout Africa, throughout Asia, and Britain is at the center of a now tightly connected global economy. Well, the industrial age continues throughout the 20th century as well, and the wars of the industrial age are unprecedentedly destructive in the physical destruction and in the loss of life, or the mass killing, better said, in World War I and World War II. And one could say that we continue to be in that industrial age until today, But I think that it is useful for our purposes of understanding to consider that the industrial age, the sixth age of globalization, concludes at the end of the 20th century, and that a new age, which I call the digital age, the seventh age of globalization, is the era in which we now live. The digital age, of course, is an interconnected world in which information in the form of bits circles the planet at seemingly instantaneous rate, of course, essentially at near the speed of light. And it is the flow of data that shapes the modern economy and shapes the technologies of the 21st century, whether it is robots or digital devices or artificial intelligence. And like other great technological breakthroughs of the past, the range of digital technologies is redefining how we live, how we work, where we live, and how we interact with each other around the world. It's also deeply disrupting political relations, stability within countries, economic and military relations across countries, and is causing a massive disruption, not unlike the disruptions caused by major breakthroughs of technology throughout history. So we're in a period of dramatic change. We are in a new era, the seventh era of globalization. Our purpose in this course is to understand this vast tableau, because this is the story of humanity itself. It's the story of early modern humans dispersing from Africa 70,000 years ago, inhabiting the entire planet, and through a series of breakthroughs of knowledge, of culture, of ideas, and a reshaping of the physical environment, a continuing change in how we live, how we work, where we live, and how we interact across the planet. The common feature of all of the ages of globalization is our interconnectedness as human beings of a common humanity that engage with each other in trade, in ideas, in cultural practices, and alas, in deadly conflict as well. Of course, our purpose in understanding this vast history is not only to understand the interplay of physical geography, of technological change, and of our cultural and political institutions, but also to understand through that historical knowledge how we can help build a sustainable future that we so much want and need.